once you experience the communion as justice, you are called to do justice. You have to engage in the works of justice, resisting the injustice, resisting the violence, resisting marginalization, resisting destruction. This is where it is not only resisting the injustice for the human community, but for the whole creation.
I think also focusing on these justice issues is really important for young people, like issues like Black Lives Matter, like disability justice, LGBTQ justice. So really letting their voices shine and giving them the space to actually campaign for these things, where in their local church often our voices can be like pushed to the side because the church is scared to keep people in. The church is like concerned about who's coming on the pews, who's doing the normal churchy stuff, right? Whereas the WCRC, I think, is just a different space where we can be prophetic and daring and safe, I think, in our exploration of these theological and prophetic issues.
Empire has been present among us in so many ways. When we talk about Nifia or racial discrimination, nationalism, forms of discrimination, authoritarianism, it's hard to talk about those things and not talk about empire and the ways in which systems continue to perpetuate what we see. The notion of empire in this moment, I believe, points to a privileging, a dominance, a taking. I would even go as far as saying it's more than taking, it's theft. that you're stealing from people what they need to exist, because empires are here to sustain themselves and to grow themselves. And when we think about economy of life, empire becomes antithetical to ensuring that there is economy of life for all people, because it's really about the few. It is empire that continues to sustain some of the challenges that we see among us that tend to go unnamed. Colonialism is still very much among us. Patriarchy continues to be challenging. So unless we're willing to call out and to call down empire, we will continue to live in a world that continues to have inequities and continues to fuel violence and to perpetuate violence against those who continue to struggle and who continue to suffer and live in the margins.
Accra Confession came about in 2004, but today that confession is as relevant as it was. It's so relevant in that it addresses issues of justice that we've already spoken about, and it does so from a perspective of three aspects: economic justice, gender justice, and ecological justice.
You know, we're living in some interesting times, and I think that there are things like the Accra Confession that were written years ago that continue to inspire prophetic witness among us. I think the Accra Confession continues, I think, to be and should continue to be a focal point for us, because we have not yet arrived in the places that would say that that confession moves off the table as a guiding document for our work together. It speaks, I think, to these times around justice issues, racism, discrimination, poverty, and a host of inequalities that I think particularly during this COVID moment have been exacerbated and in many ways I think uncovered. I mean, I think people knew they were there, but I think they're even more glaring during this time of pandemic.
Yo creo que la Confesión de Accra señala el corazón de la crisis, no solo del mundo, sino la crisis de la fe cristiana. Porque no hemos podido ver algo que la Confesión de Accra dice con claridad, y es que lo que está en riesgo es nuestra propia fe. Si nosotros nos mantenemos callados ante el sistema económico que comete injusticia, al mismo tiempo estamos negando nuestra fe en Jesucristo. Yo creo que lo más importante es que la Confesión de Accra nos invita a comprender que existe una relación profunda entre nuestra fe y los modelos económicos en los cuales nosotros estamos. Un modelo económico necesita una espiritualidad a que la sostenga.
As far as our justice work goes, we work in 4 areas. The first is economic justice. We are very concerned about the question of inequality in our world and what drives or creates inequality, and trying to change systems that actually create this inequality. So with this particular work, we work in partnership with 4 other like-minded organizations around the world. And this is the World Council of Churches, the Council for World Mission, the World Methodist Conference, and the Lutheran World Federation. We have a joint program. Apart from this, of course, we do some of our own economic justice work as well. The second area of work that we work in is ecological justice, and we know that we are in the middle of a climate crisis. We know that we have 20 years to fix this, actually even less, and if we don't make dramatic measures now, the entire planet and life on it is in dire peril. And so we have now declared a decade for climate justice, and we're working to see what can we do to get churches together on this and get churches to influence policymakers and governments to act now about this. The third area of work that we do as far as justice is concerned is gender justice. And we are very concerned at the moment about the situation of women in the context of our churches. For a long while, we have been working on the issue of violence against women, but now our communion has called us to recognize that if we want to dismantle patriarchy, the ordination of women is a key for us to do this. And the women from our communion have come together and made a statement where they said that the ordination of women is not just a good idea, it's a matter of faith. And the fourth area that we are working on, we can possibly call full and just participation. And this works towards issues of indigenous people, of racism, of young people, of people living with disabilities. This is a particularly hard question because I think it speaks to the question of faith and what it is we do. We see that a covenant is a question of a relationship. And we believe that the divine, it's God, humans with each other, and the planet are in a relationship and should be living in just relationships. But human action has resulted in these relationships becoming broken. With humans and God, humans and between themselves on so many lines, the lines of gender, the lines of race, the lines of nationality, and of course humans and the planet.